It really is a horrific situation.
All these years that the diocese has known about this problem, why did it take so long to break the code of silence?
I have never, ever, knowingly and intentionally left a priest and minister in ministry whom I knew had abused a child.
The clergy sex abuse scandal that is rocking the Roman Catholic Church around the world is sending shockwaves through the Diocese of Buffalo.
Bishop Richard Malone has been the leader of Western New York's 600,000 Catholics for the past several years. He's come under fire after the diocese released a list of 42 names of accused priests. But they're about to release a new list, which includes even more names, a lot more. In an exclusive interview with News 4, Bishop Malone tells us the message he has for all Western New Yorkers and the action he's taking to end the abuse.
This is just a disastrous situation. There's no question about it. In particular for the victims, for those who have been abused by people they should have every reason to trust.
There is a cloud of shame, embarrassment, and guilt hanging over the Catholic Church. What would allow a priest to stain the soul of a young child?
I have no idea. It might be the sickness we call pedophilia or ephebophilia, which is when it involves adolescents. Certainly, there's something evil involved in it.
So far, the bishop has released the names of 42 priests who've been accused of sexually abusing our children. As a father, I can't imagine if one of my children were abused by a priest, the rage I would feel.
Absolutely.
And the anger.
I have certainly met with parents, Don, who have expressed exactly that same sentiment. And all I can do, again, is apologize.
Why did it take so long to break the code of silence?
One of the first questions I asked my senior team was, can I be certain that any priest with a substantiated allegation of abuse of a minor is off the job?
Since the abuse has surfaced, there have been calls for Bishop Malone to resign, telling him his time is up and it's time to go. There are people out there, a lieutenant governor, a congressman, a couple deacons, an online petition, calling for your resignation. How do you prove them wrong?
People need to see that I have apologized for mistakes I made in how we handled allegations of a cleric getting involved in misconduct with an adult. I can say to you honestly with a totally clear conscience, Don, and to everyone else, I have never, ever, knowingly and intentionally left a priest and minister in ministry whom I knew had abused a child, or moved him from one assignment to another, or let him stay in ministry, ever.
But he does admit this.
When it's been an adult alleged victim, we've tried to work with that priest in a quieter way, not just, unless it was something really egregious, you know. You try to, work with that priest, work with the victims. The victims are always offered a visit with me or Bishop Grosch. Offered counseling immediately, even before we look into the veracity of the claim. But we've done that in a quiet way, which I think has been the mistake.
The bishop says all priests are feeling the stigma. Some should, others should not. I have a jaundiced eye when I see a priest.
I think what we have to remember is that while even one instance of abuse of a child is horrific and sinful and criminal, that it is still a very small minority. And I always hesitate even to say that in public because I don't mean to downplay even one instance of abuse, and God knows there have been more than one. But to remember that the great majority of our priests are suffering, as the whole community is, that some of their brothers have gotten involved in this terrible behavior.
The sex abuse has forced Pope Francis to call his cardinals and bishops to the Vatican, demanding that the abuse ends. It's time to cleanse the church of evil. It's forced 2 American cardinals to resign in shame, Cardinal Donald Wuerl and Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. Is this part of what Pope Francis has called the cleansing of the church?
I think it is part of it. There's going to be more and more call for bishops to be accountable for these things. Now, in the case of McCarrick, of course, he has been accused himself of abuse of both minors and seminarians and even priests. That's what I'm told. That's not the case with Cardinal Wuerl. From what I'm told, the Pope is very, very concerned and very committed and very upset about this situation, and I'm sure we're going to see some important changes.
With the diocese in turmoil, Bishop Malone held a healing service to pray for the victims of sex abuse by the church.
I began it with something we only do on Good Friday, and that is entering in silence, no hymn, and prostrating on the floor of the sanctuary as a symbol of reparation, of contrition, of acknowledgement of failure, not just my own failure with those cases, but the failure on the part of priests who actually abuse children, just a symbolic, admission of guilt.
Many of these cases of abuse began decades ago, and the bishop believes we're turning the corner.
We have not had one allegation of a child being abused in this time period from 2000 until now in the Diocese of Buffalo.
The sex abuse in the church has cost billions of dollars in cash payments to the victims.
We know that financial compensation doesn't heal the deep wounds of abuse, but it's a piece of it. Number one damage are the human beings who have been wounded and terribly wounded, and their loved ones. That's number one. But there's all kinds of other collateral damage, including all the money that has had to be spent. We have to spend it.
The bishop knows it's going to cost the Buffalo diocese millions of dollars to the victims. That's why he's selling the bishop's residence.
I decided the time had come to sell the house on Oakland Place.
Now the bishop is moving to a former convent at St. Stanislaus Church on Buffalo's east side. It's one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city, believing this is the modest way he should live. He showed us his austere living space.
Bishops need to bring people into their home.
That's why he's personally screening every man who wants to enter Christ the King Seminary.
I want a guy who's a healthy human being in every way. I want a man of integrity. I want a man who is transparent in who he is and what he's about. I want a man who truly loves the Lord and feels a passion to help other people come to know the joy of the gospel. That's what I want.
Bishop Malone also points to a new program, the Charter to Protect Children and Young People, put together by the U.S. Conference of Bishops.
All children are trained in our Catholic schools, in our parish programs, are trained to be able to identify the signs of impending abuse. Any adult, whether it's a priest or a bishop or a deacon or a lay minister or a youth minister, works with kids, has to be backgrounded and trained and with a monthly retraining. And so all these things are, I think, are bearing fruit.
The bishop hopes the church has turned the corner.
I believe we're doing the right things now to correct the errors and to continue doing the good things that has brought our number of abuse cases way down low. I just failed with those adult ones by not handling them adequately.
Have we left a tear in the eyes of Jesus?
Well, that's a very powerful way to put it. I'm sure Jesus weeps over what some of his trusted representatives, meaning clerics, have done to people. I'm sure. But at the other side of Jesus weeping, which you think of the crucifixion, of course, is resurrection. So for Christians who truly believe, we know that this miserable state of affairs does not mean the end of things, that we can rise from this.
The bishop also says he will cooperate with any investigation now underway by the state attorney general and the U.S. Attorney's Office.
And if people were watching yesterday, we heard from an attorney yesterday who said that survivors are not being compensated. Did you talk about that, when that might happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Each case is going to go before an independent counsel. That counsel is made up of 2 retired judges, independent. They're hearing the cases right now. They should decide next 30 to 60 days the compensation for each victim. And Bishop Malone tells us they will make public the amount of money that's paid out.
Yeah. You also mentioned, and I think this probably got a lot of attention, more priests are going to be named.
Jackie, we're waiting for that new list to come out, to come out from the diocese any day now. They tell me it's being composed as we speak. And with full disclosure, Jackie, I should mention that I'm also a member of the Bishop's Council of the Laity.
And you've known the bishop for all the years he's been here in Buffalo.
And so have you, indeed.
That's right. That's right. The woman, now in the middle of all this, the woman who claims to have copied hundreds of incriminating documents from the bishop's secret archives is coming forward.
At the end of my life, I'm going to answer to God.
Siobhan O'Connor is the bishop's former administrative assistant. 60 Minutes reveals what those documents are that she copied, and you'll see it Sunday night at 7 on 60 Minutes, right here on Channel 4.